Sirakela phambili sibiza manje from the IFP umhlonishwa umntwana kaButhelezi.
Hlonishwa Sihlalo, Your Excellency, our President, Your Excellency, our Deputy President, Honourable Speaker, our Honourable Ministers, our Honourable Deputy Ministers, Honourable Members of the Assembly. Before I speak, Madam Chair, to this budget, I will ask His Excellency the President to tell me whether he understands me. Am I speaking clearly enough, Your Excellency? Or is my speech an impediment causing difficulties? I ask because, Madam Chair, your Premier, Your Excellency, KwaZulu-Natal, the Honourable Mr. C.K. Zigalala, has publicly ridiculed me, telling the Children's Parliament, in case that the traditional Prime Minister to the Zulu Monarch and Nation, myself, is incomprehensible because he stammers. He even did a lively impersonation of me to the amusement of the audience, encouraging even the children of the Zulu Kingdom to mock me as the King's Prime Minister. And he did this in the presence of my eldest daughter. I ask, Your Excellency, what kind of leader is that? A leader who gets into a drunken brawl in public, embarrassing his party, embarrassing our province, his office in our country. I can assure him that I'm not an intellectual midget in any sense, nor by physique. So I cannot be pulled down by any midget of any shape and kind to the level of midgets. It pains me, Your Excellency, personally, that the oldest liberation movement in our continent is discredited by leaders of the Premier Zigalala's ilk. And I take it personally, Madam Chair, because when His Excellency President Kaunda, on behalf of the frontline leaders, asked me to found a membership-based organization in 1974, our leader, Mr. Oliver Tambo, immediately approved. Thus, from the start, I stated that Inkatha was rooted in the ideals of the African National Congress as laid down by its founding fathers in 1912. Now, the credibility of the ANC and of the government is continually being compromised as leaders are implicated in scandals, in corruption, abuses of power, and behavior that tears apart the moral fabric of South Africa. When leaders show no respect and act like hooligans, how can we be surprised when anarchy, such as we saw in July last year, erupts? Today, the IFP is called upon to debate the budget of the presidency, a budget that, yet again, has undergone no scrutiny of any kind by Parliament, no oversight process, and no interrogation by the people who are charged with protecting our country from abuse of power and abuse of state funds. So for the sake of enabling the President to perform its work, the IFP has always, every year, supported this budget because none of our questions being answered. We have done this, Your Excellency, on the assumption that the highest office in our land, the Presidency, would not act contrary to what is just and right. We assume. But I ask the question, is that assumption still fair? Are we fulfilling our duty, in fact, if we rubber stamp an unexamined budget in the face of abundant evidence that the road of wasteful expenditure and mismanagement and corruption is actually pervasive throughout government? Your Excellency, in presenting the President's budget last year, you said that 10 years had passed since the National Planning Commission had identified the key cause of government's failure, which was the lack of coordination. You then declared that now, a decade later, we have a capable state which is, and I quote, Your Excellency, you said, well-run and well-managed, with clear lines of responsibility and accountability, unquote. And that was June 2021. And then after that, July 2021 happened. In the aftermath of the worst civil unrest since the dawn of democracy, the investigative report of the expert panel described a government entirely lacking coordination, with duplicated reporting lines, overlapping roles, and a plethora of structures that fail to communicate. It seems essential then that this budget should provide the audited performance history of programs of the presidency. Yet the budget before us simply says that no historical data is available. Targets for future performance are happily given, but performance is omitted. For instance, our Deputy President has just mentioned that there is a task force looking at the role of traditional leadership, which although recognized in the Constitution, has no role in any legislative framework. Despite concern being expressed, compensation of employees still consumes close to 62% of the president's entire budget. 1.1 billion is spent on staff salaries alone, and estimated future expenditure on administration has increased yet again. We appreciate the president and the deputy president having forfeited a salary increase last year. We appreciate solidarity with many South Africans who lost their income entirely. Consequence.
Siyathokoza.